Welcome to the Chamber Spotlight, a local talk show podcast brought to you by the Pembroke Chamber of Commerce in association with the local scene. We'll be recording on a regular basis and we'll cover many topics that span local businesses, local elections, local town governance, and a citizens' academy. I'm your host, Fraser Townley, and today is February the 9th.
Monday.
Wow. And our guest is the president of the South Shore Chamber. I've got that right, president,
Correct.
Not the chairman. Okay,
Correct.
The president, Tim Cahill. Tim, welcome.
Thank you, Fraser. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Before we get into our conversation, we're just going to cut to the town hall where we recorded the news with Andrea Cesarini. So we'll go there now. It's February 9th. I'm here at Town Hall with Andrea Cesarini, who's got some headlines.
I do, Fraser. So this week, on Monday, February 9th, the Planning Board and the Board of Assessors will be meeting. On Tuesday, February 10th, our Bylaw Review Committee, our Zoning Board of Appeals, and our Recreation Committee will be meeting. The Recycling and Sustainability Committee will be meeting Wednesday, February 11th. And also on the 11th, the Select Board will be holding a joint meeting with the Finance Advisory Committee to discuss the town's budget for fiscal year 2027. Meetings need to be scheduled within 48 hours, so check the section of the town website titled Public Meetings for the latest update. A reminder that a majority of these meetings are broadcast on the local scene. Meetings can be rewatched on www.thelocalscene.media/Pembroke/. Some other news around town. Property tax exemptions, except for veterans exemptions, are due on Wednesday, April 1st, 2026. This is a hard deadline. They cannot accept any applications after April 1st. For additional information, please contact the assessor's office at 781-293-2393. Excise tax bills were recently mailed out. They are due Thursday, February 26th. You'll go pay those in room 17, the collector's office at Town Hall. The Pembroke Recreation Department has limited spaces available for their February break program for kids kindergarten through 6th grade. Residents can get more information on registration by visiting the Recreation Department's page on the town website. Please see the main page of the town's website for a helpful guide to prevent frozen pipes this winter. Some tips are adding extra insulation, eliminating drafts, keep warm air circulating, letting the faucet run, disconnecting and draining garden hoses and irrigation systems, and protecting outdoor water meters. A reminder to please register your dog with the town clerk's office by April 1st to avoid any late fees, and please return your annual street listing or annual census by June 1st to avoid being listed as inactive on the voter registration rolls. Nomination papers for the May 2026 local election are currently available. Papers can be pulled up until Wednesday, March 25th, and must be returned Friday, March 27th. And a reminder that the Town Hall, Town Library, Community Center, and Council on Aging will be closed Monday, February 16th for President's Day.
That's terrific. Thanks so much, Andrea. And have a good President's Day.
Thank you so much. You too.
Right, so that was the town news. Let's get back to business. Chamber of Commerce. Tim, why don't we start with a bio? You probably haven't been asked this for a while. What's your bio? What's your background?
How far back do you want me to go?
Let's start from the beginning.
No, we don't want to go that far back. Okay. That'll take up the whole time frame. But so I'm currently the South Shore Chamber of Commerce president, CEO. Mm-hmm. Just finished my first year, so I'm in my second year, 2026.
Okay.
Before that, I was the president of the Quincy Chamber of Commerce in beautiful Quincy, Massachusetts, in the north end of this region. And prior to that, I spent about 25 years in government, at the local government in Quincy as a counselor. I was elected to county government, and I served as Norfolk County Treasurer for 6 years in the 90s, in early 2000s. And then I was the state treasurer for 8 years in Boston.
So at the State House?
At the State House, yes.
Right.
So all elected positions, like I said, from about 88 all the way up to 2011. And when I left government, I went into the financial services world for a short bit. It actually started out, my first job, my first career was as a restaurateur. I opened a cafe restaurant with a couple of friends of mine from high school. So that's what really got me into business.
What sort of food did you serve?
We served, it was all homemade goods, breakfast, croissants, muffins, bagels. I mean, you name it, we had it.
Yeah.
And then we branched out into lunch, and we had a full lunch menu: pizza, sandwiches, salads. It was a nod to the healthy back in like I said, the early 80s.
Right.
We tried to put together something that we thought that we would like to eat. We had a great, one of my partners was a great cook, so he was the guy behind the scenes in the kitchen. He could bake everything and just basically come up with anything we wanted to on the menu. So there were three of us, and we ran that place together for 5 years, and I ran it myself for 5 years. So I had about 12 years as a capitalist back in my early days, and it definitely had an impact on
restaurateur, not capitalist. Restaurateur.
And it
sounds more.
Yeah, and either one works. I mean, it did sort of lay the groundwork for me in terms of my sort of political leanings and the sides that I always tried to. Not always, but most of the time tried to favor the business community and tried to bring some balance to government. Many of whom members I served with had no business background. So the things that they were doing, whether they were ordinances or laws, often did not reflect or help or support the business community. So that's where I really got my business background and my interest in business, and then spent years in politics, kind of fighting that same fight.
Yeah.
At the different levels, or sort of leaning that way and trying to bring some balance to government that didn't seem to exist and still doesn't exist, really.
I totally agree with you. I think it doesn't exist in business, in big government. It doesn't exist in local government.
Right.
Not enough business people, probably because they don't have the time. They're busy doing their business.
Yeah.
But
Correct.
Too few businessmen or people, not men necessarily, are involved in the local. They're not involved in. Well, they are involved in the chamber, but they're not involved in select boards and stuff like that.
Right. It's too bad because it creates that imbalance, and then there's not enough of the folks in politics that have any connection to someone in the business world and doesn't understand what the challenge would be. I mean, I learned right away in the very beginning that the government was my partner, whether I liked it or not. So you had to learn to work with government. At the same time, you had to push it a little bit, or at least open the door, or open their minds to things that, what this tax increase or what this regulation was going to do in the real world, how it was going to impact people in the real world. So it definitely colored my outlook, and I think gave me a perspective that doesn't exist much in government. Most elected officials, many of them are lawyers, if they have a profession outside of government, and it's just a different world. So it was interesting, and that's one of the reasons why I was sort of drawn like a magnet to this chamber world, because it's a combination of the two, the business and the political. You have to figure out, sort of how to interact with both entities and areas and try to figure out how to bring them together. And so the chamber's always been of interest to me. I was a member of the South Shore Chamber when I had my business back in the 80s and 90s. So I got some really interesting experience and met a lot of great people.
What chamber was that?
The South Shore Chamber.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Ron Zulek was the president back then, and he was the president for a long time, and he was a role model in some ways for me. I saw how good he was at his job, how effective the chamber was as an entity, and so it's where I ended up. And it's kind of full circle, but it's been interesting, and I think helpful to have had my feet in both worlds.
Sure.
Especially as an elected official, as opposed to an appointed, or someone who had to run for office and someone had to deal with the public in many ways, because the chambers are very similar. The public, though, are the small businesses and the larger businesses. So that background, I think, has served me well.
Mm-hmm. Did I hear correctly? Did you run for governor?
I did.
You did? When was that?
I ran for governor in 2010.
Right. So
as an independent. So I left the Democratic Party in 2008 or 2009. I had been a Democrat my whole life. Actually, I didn't know this. I didn't remember this, but I had originally registered as an independent when I was 18 years old. I only found that out when I went in to unregistered as a Democrat, that I actually had those independent leanings back then, and then left the party and ran as a independent in 2010. So it didn't go exactly the way I had hoped it would.
Who was who won that? Was that Charlie Baker?
No, it was the incumbent Deval Patrick, but Charlie Baker was in there. Yeah. Charlie Baker, Deval Patrick, and myself. So I picked an easy race, one that without any big names or talent. Two men who served 16 years as governor of the state. So, but at the time I was nominally the CFO as the treasurer of the Commonwealth, and I wasn't really happy with the direction we were going in. And again, I didn't think there was enough of a sense of how to grow business and how to, keep people in the state and how to grow our economy. So I figured if they're not going to listen to the CFO, then you might as well run for the top job.
But they're still not listening.
Yeah. I've experienced that. Yes, it's a challenge for elected officials who haven't really been in the private sector. I think Charlie Baker was in the private sector for a while. Deval Patrick was but politics on Beacon Hill is a totally different animal. Yeah, and it's like herding cats. It's very, very difficult to get consensus, and the loudest entity or the loudest group is going to get their side heard more than someone else. And as you said earlier, the business people generally are busy running businesses. Yeah, because they have their own political entity, their own corporate entity. I mean, absolutely. So you've got to keep your head down and work on things, and hopefully government will have you back. And that is sometimes the case, and sometimes it's not. We see when it's not, and what happens is people get up and move. I mean, which is happening. It is happening. It's been happening for a while. Yeah. And I've always said this because I learned it at an early age. People vote with their feet, and that goes for cities and towns within a community, within a state, as opposed to other states. People vote with their feet. They can go, if they don't like the school system, if they don't like the political leadership, if they're not happy with trash pickup, snow removal, whatever it is, they can move to another town. So you really, like a business, you have to be aware of that. Yes. Businesses, I used to see people who were my customers walking by and going elsewhere, and it would be like, what did I do wrong? What did I miss? It would frustrate me and keep me on my toes.
This is one of the things that we talk about a lot on this podcast. We're trying to encourage, Peter and I are trying to encourage both the businesses and engagement in local government and local, we're not saying run, but get out and vote. Come to the town meeting. We have town meetings and, we cheer when we get more than 250 people. I think the maximum I've ever been aware of is like 350, 400 people out of a town of 18,000 people. Yeah. And yet we have complete control over snow removal, pothole, everything you've just said, education, even how many police officers we have and how many firemen we employ. If you have that much control, but you don't exercise that control, whose fault is it?
Right. No, it's a challenge because, first of all, we're not, and I don't think we've ever been the most political country in the world. I mean, there's a lot of people that come to America for a better life, and they don't want anything to do with politics. They've often left a badly run political system in their own countries, going back 250 years. If you don't like the system, again, you vote with your feet and you leave. So I think it's, it has served us well, and it serves you well until it doesn't, until you get the wrong leadership in or people making the wrong decisions. And it's challenging. It's very challenging to be interested enough and to have the time to put into it. And usually people don't get involved until they get angry about something. Yeah, absolutely. And that feeds it a little bit. And anger is both helpful and hurtful when it comes to politics and when it comes to getting things done. Because we watched it. I watched it during the Super Bowl when people were ranting and raving about the halftime show. I mean, whether you were for or against Bad Bunny, or whether you were for and against Puerto Ricans or Spanish-speaking, I just wanted to watch the football game. I didn't really care about it that much.
Yeah.
But we've become a lot more political. At least it seems like in the last 10 or 15 years, where everything is political. People have turned everything into politics when often it's, it may not be the best place to solve the problem.
Yeah. It's interesting. And this isn't a political show, and these aren't the opinions of the South Shore or the Chamber of Commerce of Pembroke. But I do sometimes ask myself, Trump is not to blame. Trump's tapping into the nation.
Yeah.
He's understanding the nation, and he's tapping into that.
Yeah, I mean,
Trump, and if you're not happy with what he's doing, he's not actually doing it. He's tapping into it.
He is, and he's also tapped into this space where people finally just got tired of being told what to do and not explain what. And you have elected officials saying one thing, doing another thing, not living up to their own standards, or not telling you the truth. I always found that if you level with people, they'll respect you for it. You know, one of the things I grew up learning in politics, and I started out as pretty young, is just, respond to the phone. I mean, in those days it was phone calls.
Yeah.
Or visits. You'd see people at soccer games or at the supermarket, and they would express their opinion with you, and you should encourage them to do that, because you'll get a sense, at least a face-to-face or a voice-to-voice sense of what they want. And I always found people just really wanted to be heard.
Yeah.
And I always made clear, because someone told me this, never promise anything you can't deliver. So just say, I'll look into it, and then get back to people. I think they still respect that. And government, whether it be in the local government or in the national government, had gotten away from that. Well, we're just going to do our thing. No one's paying attention to what we're doing. And we're going to, serve ourselves instead of serve the public. And it's challenging. It really is, because it's hard to stay focused. You can get caught up in it real easily. You have to sometimes hold your ground. At the same time, you have to compromise.
Yeah.
Compromise is a bad word now, but compromise is what has gotten this country as far as it's gotten. And you think back to 250 years ago, it was a compromise. It was multiple compromises.
Wait, what was the compromise? Being British, I need to challenge you on that. What was the compromise?
Well, the compromise was: do we survive? Do we live under the British rule?
Yeah.
Or do we break off and be independent? Then the other compromise came when the Constitution was written. Do we keep slavery or do we abolish it?
Sure.
Tons of many major compromises to keep the majority together and move the country forward. And you look back on some of those compromises and you say, how did we have a compromise on slavery? But we did, because we almost, I guess, they had to. And they were great people. Washington, Jefferson, Madison. There was some great leaders who were on the wrong side of history, but they got us to where we had to go.
Sure.
And then you had someone like Lincoln came up, and others who said, now it's, now we've got to end it. And we're still in that battle where we go back and forth between what we all think is the right side of history versus the wrong side of history. And sometimes it becomes a local issue. Massachusetts is unique, having 351 independent cities and towns that all determine their own politics and their own rules.
Yeah.
Every year. Most states are governed by counties, and they're not even incorporated, a lot of their towns and cities, and they run very, very well as a region. But they don't have the local, like town meeting is.
I think it's great.
It's crazy though, because you have to vote on everything. So,
well, this is the point I'm making. If you know you have that much influence, why would you give it up?
Yeah,
and they do. They just give it up.
And then complain about it afterwards. That's the frustrating part.
Right.
Was always the frustrating part with me. Well, if you don't like the way we're doing it, challenge us. Challenge me,
Yeah.
Show me that we can do it better. So it's, but I think it was, and then you can understand, you can probably relate to this as a British, Churchill said.
I'm American now.
Well,
don't worry.
Is it of British origin, correct?
Yes.
I was going to say Brit, but I don't know if that's a slur or not. Anyways, Churchill said it. It's the absolutely worst form of government compared to every other kind. It's but compared to every other kind, it's still the best.
Yeah.
And it is frightening sometimes the way things go back and forth and back and forth. But it is self-correcting in many ways too.
Of course.
It's self-correcting, which autocratic governments don't have that.
It takes
principle.
about 4 years to correct, but yes.
Yeah. And it's frustrating when you're living through it. Sometimes, my policy recently has just been try to ignore the noise, because what comes out of Trump's mouth, what comes out of someone else's mouth is noise many times. It has no real substance to it. Focus on the substance, not so much on the noise. It's a policy that I'm taking today because I don't want to hear any talks about the New England Patriots football game yesterday. So I'm just not going to go on to talk radio. I won't listen to it for a week, and then a week from now, they won't be talking about it.
Yeah.
They lost. Yeah. It was ugly. I don't want to hear people dissecting it and dumping on these athletes who put themselves on the line.
What
yesterday.
Do they call it? The Monday morning quarterback?
Yes. Yeah. Fellowship of the miserable sometimes. But yeah, the world's filled with those. And politics is sport for a lot of people. So it's the same.
How much of a role do you think social media is playing in this changing landscape that you just described?
It plays a role, but information has always played a role. We used to have thousands of newspapers.
Yeah, true.
And those thousands of newspapers have gone away as now we have millions of voices, and podcasts like this one and others that have just taken over the airwaves. We used to watch the news every night.
Yep.
At the same time, together.
Yeah.
We don't anymore. We don't even watch the local news anymore. So because I can
And yet there's more news programs.
There are.
But they're full of opinions.
They're full of opinions. But I think what we found out that even in the past, what we used to think of news was often opinion. It was just slightly colored a little bit differently. It was balanced out a little bit more.
Yeah.
Again, having been in politics for as long as I have, and misinformation has been out there long before Facebook was created. You just have to listen to a number of different sources, different viewpoints, and then pick the one that fits you the most, or the one that you can explain. I learned this again early on: is never vote for something you can't explain to people why you voted. Because I did that once. I voted for something, and I didn't realize. I just went along with the crowd. And I couldn't defend it to people in the business community, were the ones that came to me and said, "What'd you do? You sold us out. You sold us out."
Yeah.
And I had to. The first time I wasn't able to explain it, and I never did it again. I never voted for something I didn't understand, didn't know, and wasn't able to defend, even if it was in opposition of sort of my philosophy. Because sometimes situations change.
So you vote with your head nowadays. Are you saying you once voted with your heart or your gut?
No, I think I vote with both. I vote with both. I think
it's important to.
I think, absolutely. You can't divorce one from the other. You really can't. And you can't just vote with your heart, because what you like to see happen doesn't work in the real world. Yeah. I love everyone to have a home, but some people don't want a home. Some people want to be on the street. I mean, or they choose a lifestyle that leads them that way. So, you have to figure it out as you go. And again, it's very similar, I think, to business, in that, you have to look at the P&L. You have to make sure, because you won't survive if you're not making money, unless your father or mother gives you money, and you have an inheritance. Even then, you have to work at it. At the same time, you can't make every decision based on the P&L. Sometimes you just have to go with your gut. Sometimes you have to say, I think this is going to work. If we waited to know for sure whether it was going to work, nobody would start a business. Nobody would run a business. They would just say...
failure to launch.
Yeah, exactly. I have to have it perfect. People have come to me over the years and said, I want to open a business and I need to find the perfect location. And I said, it doesn't exist. Yeah. The perfect location doesn't exist. You find one that works and that meets 2 out of your 3 needs, or 3 out of your 4 needs. I mean, when we were looking for a space to open our cafe, we had a space, and then we went away for the weekend to celebrate that we had a space. We were actually going to open, and came back, and the landlord pulled it out from under us. Then we had a second space. We thought that was going to work. That didn't work out. We ended up with our third choice, which turned out to be a perfect choice. Yeah. Because right across the street from this big office building that was just opening up. And literally, we realized by accident that everyone came out the side door, which was right across the street from us. They didn't come out the front door. They came out the side door.
Yeah.
What did we know? We didn't know it until we got there because we didn't do any kind of traffic study. We just found a place and we opened it up. And then we figured it out as we went. We figured it out as we went along. And so I tell people that all the time who want to start a business. I mean, you could probably have more insight than we had back then, but don't feel like you have to perfect it. I just read The Founders, book about the PayPal mafia.
Oh, right.
Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and the whole gang. And reading that story about how PayPal started and evolved, it was a whirlwind. I mean, in terms of what they started with versus what they ended with and how it all came together and how it fell apart. And it was fascinating to watch and how close it came to just imploding, where the money almost drew up. I mean, everything was about timing and about just following through with things and going where the product led, where the product led you, going to what people wanted out of the project, the product, instead of saying, this is the product that we want to sell.
That is the world's... So I have a philosophy, and that is you have to have a great idea. But on top of that, you have to have a great plan. But on top of that, you have to have great execution. So many times you see great plans, great execution, crap idea. Or great idea, great execution, shit plans.
Yeah.
It's
okay. It's a podcast. It's not,
but
the FCC is not going to weigh in on this one yet.
Not a particularly good plan. And we talked about this earlier. I've got this book in my hand, Apple in China. This book, it's quite incredible how floundering Apple were until the iPhone came along.
Yeah. Before
the iPhone came along, they were stumbling into successes and they were tripping over mistakes and they were all over the place. And they spent billions trying to work out how to do things that other people were doing just fine.
Right.
They were learning from Compaq. They were learning from Dell. They were borrowing money from Bill Gates just to make payroll. Yeah. It was just a disaster. And they had one smart idea. It changed everything.
All it takes. And that really is the story of the American system, is you keep trying with something until you figure it out or you fail, and then you try it again. Yeah. You try something else. The old story of Edison, having 10,000 mistakes before he came up with the light bulb. Yeah. Well, the first light bulb actually worked. And there are millions and millions of stories like that. And that's kind of what I try to tell people, is that you don't have to have it all figured out, but you do have to take the plunge if you want to get somewhere. And that goes for anything. When I first ran for politics, I just said, this is what I want to do. I want to run for city council. If I look back on it, it was, I lost 2 races. I was in politics for 25 years. I only lost 2 races, my first one and my last one. And if I was to look back,
they're good bookends.
Yeah, if I was to look back on it, I'd say they were, I was the wrong person at the wrong place at the wrong time with my philosophy. I was too young when I started out. Being an independent seemed like a good idea, but the party system still controlled things. So you had to pick one party or the other, Republican or Democrat, and then go with it. And that's something that I still believe in. When I was running for city council, I was just out of college. I lived at home with my parents, had a part-time job, was not paying any tax, no property tax. I mean, I was a kid. And what was I thinking of? I almost won. I mean, I really almost won, and that was just through hard work and trying to figure it out and putting it together. And even in the state, when I ran for governor, even in that race, I mean, I was close for a long time. I mean, the idea of an independent, someone who was not tied to the parties, intrigued a lot of people, and it is the majority of people in Massachusetts are unenrolled, independent.
At least 60%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So on paper, it makes a lot of sense, but then you realize what the power of the parties are.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And I found out when I first ran for office what the power of the incumbents were. I was a challenging incumbents. But I wouldn't change either of those races.
First of all, their names are first on the ballot.
They are. They are. Yeah. They have all kinds of money. I mean, it's just there's things sometimes ignorance is bliss because you wouldn't do it if you really knew what the outcome was going to be. And that's the part of the business world that I love as well, because it really is when you peel back the onion or you look behind, inside the book, you realize that these people aren't that different from us. They had one thing. They had guts.
Yeah.
They had a dream, and they were going to try really hard to get it. And then luck plays a role, being in the right place at the right time with the right product. Timing is everything. And it's true. I mean, my wife tells me all the time, cliches are there for a reason because usually they're true. That's why they become cliches. But, and that's what I love about the business world. Politics was interesting to me, but everything is public. Everything. You make a mistake, you vote somewhere. Everyone knows what you're doing all the time. So it gets really hard to be independent, to be aggressive, to vote your conscience when you know you're just going to get screamed at for it and beat up. In business, you can do a lot of that sort of outside the glare until you become very, very, powerful, or very, very important, or very, very successful. Then the glare comes back. But you can control your own destiny a little bit more too. So, but they both, I just think that that's, again, going back to my original thesis is why I love this business of the chamber, because you're combining the two. And you have to really think of the political side. We were working with the Hanover Chamber, which is one of our affiliates, and they were really frustrated with the selectmen, the select board, because they had raised taxes on businesses the year before, raised the percentage on businesses, trying to help the homeowner by putting more tax on the business, and the community, the business community, the chamber was just beside themselves, saying, how are we going to get them to listen? And we helped them with a little bit of a strategy that I understood from being on that side of the table would be, I thought would give them a chance. And we had I think in 2024, it was a 4-1 vote to raise taxes against the business community. Basically, here, you have to pay this. And a year later, it was 4-1 to keep the taxes exactly where they were, to not shift the blame, the balance onto the business community. And again, it was contacting the select board individually and as a group, sending letters, not getting into an argument.
Yeah.
It's one of my first rules that if you want someone to vote your way, the last way to get it is to start yelling at them.
Yeah, you can't use a stick. Use a carrot.
Yeah. And so it was a really good experience and a good example of how you can, and basically, I think the real selling point was letting them know that the business community in Hanover lives in Hanover. They're the ones that support the local baseball teams, the local hockey teams, the local road race every year. It's the small business world of people who generally live in Hanover and work in Hanover. You're hurting the people that...
You can't squeeze them.
Yeah, and you're hurting the people that are really giving back to the community more than the national brands and the international companies that pay a lot of taxes but aren't really putting money into the community the way the local folks do.
Yeah.
And it was really... I enjoyed the outcome. I enjoyed the fact that the business community felt heard. And with the idea that if we want the businesses and the business community to grow, and they will pay more of the taxes, they will support the schools, even though they may have no kids in the school system. They will, support public works, even though in many of these cases they're taking care of their own businesses and their own parking lots. They're paying for that separately. Yeah. But they still will do it. And I think that the boards of selectmen, the city councils, the town councils will listen. They want to do the right thing, but if they're only hearing from one side, and that side is residents don't tax us, and they don't hear the counter side, which is businesses don't tax us either, be fair to both.
You got to have advocates.
Yeah, you really do, and they'll do it. And that was one of our wins last year, working with our affiliate, the Hanover Town, the Hanover Chamber of Commerce, to help craft a strategy and get in front of them, both from the regional point of view as the South Shore Chamber, but more importantly from the local chamber, which is why we love the affiliate program at the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah. So that's a great introduction, Tim. That's most of our time. So let's talk about the South Shore Chamber. Just describe for the people listening in what the South Shore Chamber is.
South Shore Chamber is a region of 25 cities and towns, from Quincy in the north down to Plymouth in the south, and go as far as up to Milton and Canton and Randolph. And we represent about close to 1,300 businesses, both large and small, from a regional perspective.
Yeah.
So we support the region and try to make the business climate work so that people have the option, if they choose, obviously, to live, to work, and to raise a family on the South Shore. That's our goal. And that means working on transportation issues so people can get around and they can spend more time with their families than in their cars. Work on employment issues so that we can create an economy where people actually have jobs or qualify, so the businesses can hire locally, which they prefer to do, because that means people stay longer. They get invested in the community.
Office.
Yeah. And to create, a region where people feel comfortable, safe, and secure raising their family. This is a good community. The school system is really good. There's a lot of things to do for the family, for individuals, for couples, so that they're not bored. Like, life doesn't end at 8 o'clock when you put the kids to bed at night, There are things to do on the weekends. And I think there's many cultural things as well, so that people don't feel stilted. Like, I'm in the suburbs. We all fight that urge, I think, to move to the suburbs when we're younger. And then eventually it kind of pulls us, especially when we have families, or we get jobs. And we want, if we can, we want some of the nicer things in life, maybe a driveway as opposed to parking on the street. Things that you take for granted in the community, but if you live in Boston right now, and the snowbanks are 10 feet high, and there's no place to put your car, or you have to walk, up 5 flights of stairs to bring your groceries in, those are things that we don't have to deal with if we live in the suburbs. And there's a trade-off. So we try to make the trade-off as small as possible. Like, this is, the lifestyles there's as much to do as there is in the city of Boston without the 2-hour commute, without the fighting, without the parking costs, things like that. And we really work with the business community because all businesses rely on good employees. You can't do it without a staff, without a team. I couldn't do anything without my team at the chamber. I mean, they do all the work. I'm there to direct. I'm the orchestra leader, so to speak. But you got to have the orchestra. You got to have the musicians. Well, there's no sound. You could be waving your wand all you want, and you got nothing unless you have a really good group of musicians. And that's kind of what we try to do, is keep that balance between a good quality of life and a really thriving business community, and just try to figure out, again, how to lessen the pain points, whether it be traffic or whether it be, the type of business that I want to work in. So, I mean, our major business on the South Shore, our biggest employer is healthcare. The healthcare industries, the hospitals in Milton, Plymouth, and right in the middle in Weymouth, are things that, are entities that we need. Healthcare is something that we all need, whether we're young, whether we're middle of the age, whether we're older. And having good access to good health care, I think, is important. And then creating, obviously the jobs are being created, filling those jobs with good people is a challenge. I mean, for a century, everything regarding health care existed in Boston. Yeah. If you needed it, you wanted it, you either had to work there, you had to go there. Now it's coming out into the suburbs, and it's really making its mark on the South Shore. And we've got quality Boston hospitals moving in to the South Shore, either in whole or in part. Because
are they members of the chamber?
Yes. All the hospitals, Deaconess Hospital, Milton is a member, partner. the Plymouth Hospital, the Plymouth BID just joined as a partner, and South Shore has been a big player and a big part of the South Shore Chamber for years and years and years. And and it's not just in the hospitals, but it's every part of the healthcare sort of spectrum.
Yeah.
There might be medical devices, there might be physical therapists, there's urgent care, there's all different types. And like we see in the big cities, the industries like to sort of congregate together. Mm-hmm. So you build these clusters, and that's one of the things those are the things that we work on for all different industries, but one of our focuses has been on healthcare since I've been there, because it's just so important in terms of creating jobs, serving people, and giving the folks who live there access to the best healthcare in the country.
And I do think the regional healthcare in Massachusetts, particularly Boston and the South Shore, is the best in the world.
Second to none. It really is.
Best in the world.
You may still want to go into Boston to get surgery, even though a lot of those surgeons are here in the region. But for all of your aftercare, it can be done here. I remember when my father was dying of cancer, and they had great treatment. He lived longer than he probably should have, given his smoking and drinking proclivities. But he lived a good long life because of the health care that we had here in Massachusetts. But the biggest challenge was bringing him into Boston for treatment.
Right.
So having that treatment here on the South Shore just makes life easier and better, and less hectic. It's never fun to have to go for whether it's chemotherapy or whatever the treatment is. But it's exacerbated if you have to spend $40 to park, and it's just a traffic, and you spend 3 hours in the car. And we hear horror stories from people who had to drive up from the Cape to go to Boston, and now they can drive up from the Cape and go to Plymouth or go to Weymouth or even go to Quincy or Milton for almost all of their needs. So, and that's a very good change that's been happening over the last 20, 30 years. And we want to capitalize on it, because as we started this conversation, that people vote with their feet.
Yeah.
If you don't provide the services that they need, good quality services, people will leave.
Of course.
And if they start leaving, then you can't fill the jobs that are needed, and then the companies leave. The companies follow the talent. So, and right now it looks as if there's a lot of talent, and part of that was COVID. A lot of people left the city, including my own children, who loved living in the city, but it lost its allure during COVID. And when the younger children were ready for school, the school system left a lot to be desired in Boston, so they moved south. Mm. And that was them and many others. So we have to capitalize on it. Or they'll keep moving south, or they'll move out. Yeah. And that's really what we don't want to see happen. But that's where the challenge lies. You have to think. What I love about my job is I'm thinking every day about what can we do, what should we do, how can we do it, how can we be relevant, not just from a chamber perspective, because chambers are many things. They're event-driven, they're networking for the business community, but they're also economic development for the region, and we hold those two parts very, very close to the heart as far as our mission. Our mission is to help businesses connect, thrive, grow, but also play a role in economic development, so that we make sure that the transportation network is such that people can get back and forth, to and from, that there are the businesses coming here that will create the jobs for the future, so that when all these kids that are going to college right now will have a job, hopefully somewhere close by where we can keep them.
Yeah.
Because if you lose the kids, if you lose the young people, you've lost the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we've got part of I think the secret to our success is we've got schools like Bridgewater State, Curry College, Stonehill, Massasoit in our network, in our orbit as our partners, and they're helping work with the hospitals and the healthcare institutions to create the training for the jobs that these hospitals need. Stonehill's a perfect example. They just created a nursing program at Stonehill College, which is number one on the list of needs for hospitals, nurses. And when you have these schools in particular in your region, the vast majority of the students come from this region to go to the schools, and they stay.
Yeah.
Because that's where their families are. They're not heading to New York. They're not going to Nashville. They're not generally leaving the state unless they have to.
Yeah.
They want to stay local. So,
Sure.
And that's part of what we're focused on, is making sure there's a reason for them to stay. So they don't have to work, in a job that they could get without college,
So let me ask you, you've referenced twice now the transportation infrastructure and how it's important to you. Do you work with the Old Colony Planning Council, Mary Waldron?
We do.
Good.
We do.
Good.
We coordinate with them. We coordinate with anyone and everyone that wants to, because the Chamber region is not like a congressional district or a county.
Yeah.
It has boundaries, but they're very amorphous. Mm-hmm. So something, happening in Bridgewater is still important, even though it's technically not in our region. Same thing with Brockton, the same thing with Avon. And we want to support the region, even if it's outside of our particular region. So Old Colony, we've had the general manager, CEO of the MBTA come to speak to our members, to give them a firsthand look at what his strategy is and what the state strategy is to move people back and forth. It was an interesting story over the last week. I'm sure you heard of it, where the ice cutters had to go through Boston Harbor to get the ferry through into Boston. And it was kind of, I think one of my son-in-law or my daughter were on one of the boats, and it was kind of cool to see the cutter right in front of it.
Yeah.
Pulling the path, because people have to work.
Yeah.
And no matter how cold it is, no matter how much snow is on the ground, they still have to get to work. So, and that's an area that we really feel that we want to build on, is water transportation. Because when you think about it, it is somewhat unique that we have this shore that goes from the north all the way to the Cape, and we don't have a whole lot of ferries like they have in New York, or they have in Vancouver, or they have in Seattle, where they just take advantage of the coast, and that's how they move people.
And it's a protected coastline.
Yeah.
Being inside the Cape, I mean, it's...
Yeah, and it is
right.
the best way to travel, except on when it's 10 below zero. It's really the best way to travel, and people love going to and from because it's predictable too, except in those few icy days. And we've only had a few of them in the last decade.
I think there's a bar on the board as well, isn't there?
What's that?
There's a bar on board as well.
There is. That makes it a little bit even nicer, especially as you're getting on Fridays and stuff. So yeah, it's just a better way to travel, to commute.
Yeah.
And it's an additional way to commute, because not everyone is close to the T stations. So between commuter rail, the MBTA service, and the water transportation, we just want to give, again, people options.
Sure.
Options so they can get out of their car. Options so that they can count on the train because they have a basketball game for their child at 7 p.m. that they want to make sure they get to. All the things that I stressed about.
Predictability.
Yeah, it's like I said, that's why, again, I don't want to keep coming back to this, but the world I live in involves business and politics, government, in the private sector, because it all has to fit.
Yeah.
As I often say to folks in government when I was serving, is we can't kill the goose that lays the golden egg, which is the business community. They pay the vast majority of the taxes.
For sure.
I know we're envious of the wealthy, but the wealthy still pay, most of them. Mm-hmm. The vast majority of them pay most of the taxes. So be careful. The policies you lay out, be careful that especially if it's punitive. I never understood why you want to punish someone who's created 50,000 jobs in this country.
Yeah.
Or 10,000 jobs or 10 jobs. I mean, because that's what we all need to survive. Yeah. We need to work to survive. We need to provide for our families and stuff. So it's a little bit perverse, and I get it sometimes, because these wealthy oligarchs, I guess you might want to call them, they sometimes feel like they deserve it. The way they, I guess the way they amplify their money, or but who cares? I don't really care.
That's a dozen people.
It's true. It's a small group, and that people can live the life that if they've worked hard and made a lot of money. Government will get their share, and they deserve to live the way they want to live. I mean, It's not wouldn't be my decision, I hope, and I've never been rich enough to even have that become a thought. How do you live like an oligarch, And do they have outside influence? Sometimes with certain people, but you said it at the beginning. There are plenty of ways to be involved. And if government's not doing what you want it to do, look to yourself first before you blame them. Are you involved? Are you going to the meetings? Are you paying attention? Are you reaching out? Because if you're doing that, the vast majority of elected officials will respond to it.
Yep.
The ones that don't, they don't last that long. They really don't.
We had Ken Sweezy and Kathy Linatra on separate podcasts on, and they both struck me by saying that a lot of representatives are going to come back to their constituents and say, so the state have just warranted, or they've just said this, and they've just told us we had to do that, and la, 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 la. Whereas they both take the attitude of, no. We're here to represent the constituents.
Yeah.
So they actually do a lot of the fighting in the State House as opposed to coming back to the suburbs, as it were, that struck me as a great statement. And one's left, one's right.
Yeah.
And they've got a good balance.
And you know what's good about them? And I've met a lot of folks like those two representatives here, is they're relatively new.
Yep.
That is, I spent 25 years in government at 3 different levels, and never more than 10 years at any one. Because I think, like anything, you get stale. You start listening to the wrong people. You're not as connected to the people that you represent. And that's, if there's the biggest problem in Washington is that disease where you get a job and you keep it forever. And you protect it by raising more money than anyone else, and kind of wall yourself off. And the reps and the senators that we have down here, I think, are excellent in that they do listen. And you might not always agree with them, but they listen and they're willing to explain why they feel this is the right way to go. And I've really enjoyed working with them, and I think I've gotten to know all of them in the year that I've been here, at least most of them, if not all of them. And I love it because I can see myself in these folks when I was, young and.
Are you still young, Tim? Come on.
And just, I guess it's like anything, when it's new and fresh, you just look at it differently. And you make mistakes, which is fine. I mean, the experience factor is okay. Sometimes it's great, but sometimes it's just, well, that's the way we always did it.
Oh yeah,
and that's never a good answer.
No, not at all.
And that's what I've tried to bring to the South Shore Chamber. I succeeded two men, one who served for 27 years in the position, and the one before me, Peter Foreman, who served for 20 years in the position. So that's 47 years of with two people.
Longevity.
It's a long time. It's a long time, and they both did a great job. So, but just because that's the way it's always been done, or it's been done that way for the last decade or two, doesn't mean that's the way it should be done going forward. So I'm always pushing my people and myself to say, all right, is there another way to do this? And if there isn't a better way, we're not going to do it just to do it. We're not going to blow things up because we have a really good, solid chamber, but we can always improve it.
Yeah.
And we can always be there for more businesses. I mean, I told my staff and my board that we want to be, within 5 years, the biggest chamber by number in the state. And someone asked me why that's important, and I said, because we'll be heard more. The bigger we are, the more businesses we represent, and the more different kind of businesses we represent. Size matters when it comes to political sort of power.
Sure.
And the more people we represent, the more business we represent, the bigger we are, the more our voice will be heard.
Sure.
And that's the reason. It's not just to be number one, although there's nothing wrong with wanting to be number one.
No.
But to be number one so that our voice is heard. So when people say, we're going to do this, we're going to move this, I don't know, this incinerator down the South Shore, we're going to say, hell no, you're not. Or what are you going to give us for it? What are we going to get for it? And is it going to be safe for our citizens? And so is it going to help the community and create jobs and businesses? What's the trade-off? What's the trade-off? So I really enjoy that, and I think business needs change. Disney just hired a new CEO or just named a new CEO, and it's read his bio, and it's interesting. And I don't know how you can run a company.
He's a local man, isn't he?
Yes, I think he's from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I think he's from. They didn't say where. They did say he went to Skidmore College from Massachusetts. I read that, but I don't remember exactly what town.
So I know a couple of people that have put their head up and said, "Oh, I went to college with him, or I went to school with him." So I'm guessing he's a local guy. But
no,
it was time for Bob Iger to step down.
Absolutely,
anyway. But
probably was time 5 years ago for him to step down. And again, that goes to the old adage that sometimes when you're on top, and it's hard to give it up. It's very hard to give it up. I get it. I don't want to retire, at least not right now. So you want to still be vibrant and still have something to say, and you get used to, being in charge.
Yeah.
And there's a draw to it, and I get it. But it also, you have to know when it's time to move on and stuff. So this new man, I wish him well. I wouldn't want to be in his position because that's just a huge company with very noisy shareholders. But business is just like government. I mean, especially in the public realm, public businesses. You have shareholders, you have a board, you have people telling you what to do, and they vote every single day by purchasing the stock, by selling the stock. And I think one of the reasons that business sometimes works more efficiently than government is because they vote every day. Whereas government, you have a couple of years or number of years, and some people have figured out how to stay forever. But that, again, goes back to individuals. I mean, I ran for office when I was 22, and I almost beat a 24-year. I had almost beat a 24-year incumbent, meaning that person had been in the job longer than I had been alive. And
that's a great stat, actually.
And actually, I did knock him off. I didn't win the seat, but I knocked him. He ended up losing that year, not because it had nothing against him, but he'd been there for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And people recognized that. And that was one of the things that helped. And I respected that as well. I wasn't like your years of service didn't matter. It's just sometimes, so you gotta make room for the next generation.
Absolutely.
The next generation that understands AI and with the changes that are going to happen in the world, so that they can get ahead of it and make sure it doesn't, blow the country up.
Sure. So you talked about being number one and the growth that you're looking for. Let's segue that into our affiliation. So the Pembroke Chamber have just recently become an affiliate of the South Shore. Is that helping your growth, or is that a different program?
No, that's helping our growth.
Yeah.
And I think increasing our influence. And that's the purpose of the affiliation, not just for growth, although it does add members because they become part of us. It doesn't add revenue necessarily, at least not in large numbers. To be a member of the Pembroke Chamber doesn't mean you pay the South Shore Chamber to be a member. Well, you can do both.
Sure. And
we encourage people to do both, but they don't have to. It's a way for us to support the local chambers. As the CEO of a former CEO of a local chamber, I understand what local chambers can provide is not necessarily what regional chambers provide, and vice versa. We can't do the local events. We can't do all the things, the Pride Days and I don't know if Pembroke has a day, but I know Hanover has a day with road races, and they do locally focused events.
Sure.
Really tend to focus on the smaller of the small businesses, the mom and pops, the community businesses like I talked about in Hanover. And again, our businesses and members can cover that whole swath, large, small, all together. So our job is to really focus and support Pembroke Chamber members, but also the Pembroke community when it comes to whether it's a political fight or whether it's a regional, fight, that they can then speak with a louder voice because we're also affiliated with Marshfield and Pembroke and Hanover and Braintree, Weymouth, Rockland, and hopefully a few more before we're done. So it gives us a little more heft, I think, but it also keeps us focused on what's on the ground. And there are businesses like myself. I started out in local government and moved all the way up to state government. So there are businesses that start out small and local and eventually want to become regional. And that's when they can they can find us, or we can be support to them. So I wish I could take credit for having created the program that was done by Peter Foreman years ago, and a great job and a great program that we're proud of. So, and Pembroke is our first new affiliation since I've been there. So we're really happy and proud of you and Peter Brown and the whole team at Pembroke. So when they're not there to replace you folks, we're there to support you folks. Most local chambers are volunteer run. So it's really hard to do this job as a chamber without paid staff.
Yes.
I can vouch for that. Very, very hard to do it. So we have the paid staff, we have the back office, we have the means to support you, as well as the other communities that are part of our affiliation, and make sure that, everyone is heard.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what we're trying to do. And then when it comes to a fight or a challenge that may be slightly above your pay grade in terms of we don't have the resources to do it, that's where we come in.
Yeah.
And the things that you folks do really well, we won't ever interfere. We'll just support and amplify. Because what I found since I've been here is that, each of the communities, especially the affiliates, are their own entity. But people in Marshfield want to, they don't just stay in Marshfield. They might go to Hanover. They'll go to Norwell. They'll go to Pembroke. They'll go maybe up to Weymouth. They'll go down to Plymouth. So if you all know what's going on, you may just want to cross over and say, I'm going to check that farmer's market out. I'm going to check out that community event there, or this civic event.
Yeah.
Because it looks like fun, and we just want to get out of our community every night. Just like as my wife and I were growing up in Quincy, we just needed to get out, and we'd go to Boston just for a night out, just for something different, So, and that's the other part of it. We want the folks outside, sort of that surround Pembroke to know what's going on, if they want to know what's going on. And it also, I think, what it does too is it helps the leadership of each of these chambers can get support from us, because it's hard to do. It's very, very hard to do when you don't have resource, you don't have paid staff. You're doing a full-time job, and you're running the chamber on the side, and you have a family, and you have other things to do. So our job is to fill that gap, and I think we do it very, very well, and we look to do more of it. We're looking with, trying to work with Hingham, with Norwell, with Hull, potentially with Abington to do affiliations as well. So, and like I said, the whole is bigger than the sum of its parts, as we all say. So I'd like to continue to build on that.
Good. No, I know Peter and I did a lot of the, I don't want to say negotiating. It wasn't a negotiation, but you came to one of our board meetings and you impressed all of the members. So it wasn't a decision that Peter and I made. It was a decision that the whole group made. Yeah. And we're pretty excited about the affiliation for sure. We're
very, very excited about it because, again, it's the first one that we've added since I've been there. So it's great. We look to add more, but you folks moved quickly. And I think hopefully you saw what it was that we had to offer. And I'm just really excited about...
Well, you said you'd be a guest on this podcast.
Yes.
We
There we go. There was check one off. And the beauty of the affiliation is there is an agreement, but nothing is written in law. I mean, if there's ever a time when Pembroke wants to go off on its own and be its own chamber, that's perfectly fine. And
I can't see the benefit of Brexit.
There you go. Bringing it all home, yes. Let's hope not. And let's face it, that's why Brexit happened. You stop when the larger EU community stopped listening to its members, and realized they're not all exactly alike. They don't all have the same needs. They want to be treated as individual entities, and what works for one doesn't work for the others.
Yeah.
And, Brexit, I always often say that when businesses or government agencies go on strike, that means we failed.
Yeah.
Government has failed. The business community has failed because there should never be a strike. You should always be able to work out your differences in-house before it gets to that. And wars are like that, and Brexit is exactly like that. So when someone leaves or wants out, you got to ask yourself, what did we do wrong?
Yeah.
What didn't work? And you become inflexible. And I've seen some of that, when it came, and no, we don't do things that way. Why not?
Yeah,
why not? I mean, is it a rule? Is it a law? Or is it just the way we've always done things? And you have to be flexible. You have to be flexible. And I think that's one thing this country, even though it doesn't always seem it does it well, I think it does it very well. We just keep, like you said, you move from one, hopefully not extreme, but from one side to the other. Try to stay away from the extremes. But, you have to, I met with one of the greatest entrepreneurs.
A fish doesn't swim in a straight line.
Yeah.
It does that.
I got to know one of the greatest entrepreneurs in the history of this country, Bill Rosenberg, who was the founder of Dunkin' Donuts.
Uh-huh.
And I got to spend some time with him years and years ago before he passed away. And one of the smartest men I've ever met in my life. And really, not just from a businessman's perspective, but everything. He once said to me, when we did the Marshall Plan, the country did the Marshall Plan, we should have done it as a franchise. Meaning instead of getting paid back or loaning the money, we should have helped them rebuild and taken a fee as they grew, just like a franchise does. And I looked at him and I said, this guy's onto something, because that made total sense. Let's take a piece of their GDP, because if you help them grow, then everyone grows. And he also said something that's always stuck with me, that the thing that makes this country great is it's just like a big pendulum. And when it swings too far one way, it swings back. And that's the beauty of it, because if you don't like things, you got to wait a little while for it to change and for the public opinion to change. And we're seeing that. We're seeing some of that with the after the first year of the Trump administration, where the public that was with him on certain issues is now sort of seemingly against him on issues and stuff. And that's, a good politician will stay ahead of that. A good businessman will stay ahead of that. And that's what we search for, is the good quality people to run our businesses, to run our government, to understand that at the end of the day, people's decisions matters. If they don't like a product, they're not going to buy it.
Yeah.
If the quality of that product stinks, no matter what the price is, sometimes the price will matter, sometimes the quality will matter. They'll decide. And you always have to get ahead of your customers or your voters to make sure that you're on the right side of it. And that's why organizations like us are out there, to be a voice, an organized voice, to say, guys, you're killing us.
Yeah.
You're killing us. Just look at the people leaving. One of the big issues that we face this year is this statewide rent control referendum vote. And for a community that is short on housing, that needs more housing, you can't vote for anything that will do more damage to housing stock
For sure not.
than putting a statewide rent control mechanism on it. And I understand the need for affordable housing, but that's just not the way to do it. So our chamber, along with other business groups, are going to sort of beat the drum on that issue to make sure people understand it. Because not just because it's for our members, because our members are builders, our contractors, our developers, our property owners, but for the people who are renting.
Yeah.
The people who aren't members, but maybe are workers, employees of the people, and you just. Sometimes you just have to say, what is this? But, that's democracy. We have a referendum issue. If the legislature is not going to deal with something, you get the votes, you do it. The business community needs to speak up on these things and not be timid about it, because they're going to make some enemies, renters, and they may hate us over this. But again, the message is we're trying to help those renters, and more supply, more growth won't always lead to lower prices, but it will stabilize, if nothing else. It'll keep the rents from going up. It'll make things more competitive, so that you can't go up 10% if your competition is staying flat, because then people will just move. And renters can move. They can leave when they want to leave after a year.
That's the beauty of being a renter.
That's the beauty of it,
Yeah.
That's the challenge of it too. So that's a big issue, and it's a dangerous referendum, because I think many people will assume, well, don't we want to just lower the price of housing? This is the way to do it. Mm-hmm. And rent control's never worked.
Nope.
It's never worked. Wherever it's gone, it's never worked. And it's a disincentive to investments. It's a disincentive for both small and large land owners to provide rental housing, and it's so that's a perfect example of an issue that people don't feel like they're being heard on, and maybe it hasn't been explained well enough, or we're just not building enough housing. And I think that's really the problem, is we're not building enough housing where the residents want it.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in forcing towns to build housing that don't want it, but incentivizing those who do.
Yeah.
And Pembroke's been an example of, I think, smart growth where it's acceptable and where it's needed, as opposed to fighting City Hall, so to speak, or the State House and saying, we're not going to have any of that here. We don't want that in our community. And I get that. I get it. But again, I think
the problem with that is the MBTA Act, for instance, came our way. We were compliant. We had bylaws that made us compliant. So we just said, yeah, we didn't acquiesce to anything. We just said, yeah. Then the neighboring towns were being told these are the penalties for not
correct
doing it. And then that's when everything, and it's again, I learned this from Ken and Kathy.
Yeah.
You can have a state mandate and you can abide by that state mandate if it makes sense. But if you're going to get beaten up, then people are going to resist.
Yeah. And I don't blame them for resisting.
I don't blame them at all. Anyhow, you and I had a pre-meeting and we said we wouldn't talk about MBTA and BESS and stuff like that. So we won't. Okay, we're horribly over time.
I assume that. I apologize.
No, this has been a great conversation. Let me ask you about, quickly, your vision for, I think we've actually heard a lot of your vision.
Yeah.
Was there anything you missed out?
I don't think so. Like I said, we want to be the largest and the most effective. Not large for the sake of being large. If we can't do our job and we get too big, then that doesn't work. But the most effective chamber, voice for the business community as well as for the residents of the South Shore, because I think they're all part of the same.
Yeah. I think having a target for growth, saying I want to be number one is fine, but you've got to have growth.
Yeah.
And because without growth, things get stale, they get stagnant, and the costs catch up with you.
Yeah.
They're on the same curve right behind you.
I learned it in business. If you're not growing, and I got out of the business when I stopped growing. We stopped growing the restaurant and we were just doing the same thing over and over. I said, if we're not going to grow, we're going to die, or someone's going to take us over and beat us at our game.
Yeah.
They can come in with a better product, with more resources. So if you're not growing, you then get out and do something else. So we do want to grow. We want to grow reasonably well. We want to make sure that the growth is for the current residents as well as new residents that come in.
Sure.
Because and do it in a smart way so that people's taxes don't exceed their ability to pay those taxes. And then they just say, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm out. I'm moving, and I'm taking my children with us. I'm taking my business with us. I'm taking my taxes with us to another state or to another.
That's the short-sightedness that
it is. It absolutely is. I mean, and again, I wasn't part of this chamber when the millionaire's tax was being debated, but I did recognize that was a missed opportunity for chambers and for the business community as a whole. And people were afraid. They wanted to speak up. Who wants to speak up for a millionaire? Nobody does. And if they're a millionaire themselves, they're shy about it. They don't want to get beat up. They don't want to get doxxed. They don't just want to be in the public eye. But the business community needs to speak up, especially when you've got a tax-free state on your border. Not just about moving to Florida. You're moving to New Hampshire. That's easy.
For sure.
That's very easy. So, and that has brought in revenue, but it's also driven people out of the state. And that revenue will start to shrink. And then the legislature is going to be forced to, then the millionaire's tax will suddenly be the half a millionaire's tax. And the $250,000 a year income tax. And that's what happens to taxes if you're not careful.
We're the fastest shrinking state.
Yeah. And like
we have to be aware of that.
Like we just said, if you're not growing, you're dying.
For sure.
And all your talent will be leaving, and you don't want to be the last person left to turn out the lights when it's time to go. You don't want a state made up of just senior citizens and kids.
Yeah.
children, because the whole middle is sort of hollowed out, just rich and poor. You want a middle class. You need those people that are striving to do more and to become more and stuff. So, it is, at the end of the day, it's a very basic, calculation formula.
Mm-hmm.
You grow, your family grows, everyone, it usually, not always, but usually becomes better, especially if you grow wisely and smartly. You're not just growing for the sake of growing, but you're trying to provide more for people. And I find that in businesses
longevity.
too. The businesses that there was a story recently, and I know I'm going over, but there was a story recently, a lovely story about this company that sold, out, and almost every employee got a huge check, $1 million check or more, to do what they wanted with it, so that the person, the company just didn't sell and walk out the door and leave their employees. I can't remember if it was
this
here.
Story.
I think it was here. We have a local example of that, Paul Sullivan from Sullivan Tire.
I was going to say, I think it's...
That's a different story. He made his employees owners.
Right.
So the employees own the company. This was a different example, but similar.
Right.
They just, instead of taking the hundreds of millions of dollars themselves, they gave a good portion of that to their employees. And Paul did the same thing. And
it was the Sullivan Tire example that I was thinking of.
Yeah, and that's that perfect example. And he could have sold it to any private equity firm or venture firm in the world, would have taken those 132 locations and those 1,600. The amount of money that he generates every year would have fit nicely in a private equity portfolio. And he didn't want to do it, and he could have made a lot more money if he did it that way.
Sure,
but he didn't, and we're thankful for that. So that the Sullivan Tire company continues to grow and continues to be part of the South Shore. It's a perfect example of a family that started with one store in Rockland.
Yeah.
50, 70, 75 years ago, one store. And now it's everywhere. Yeah. All through New England and New York, and it's a fascinating American story, and it's got a happy ending.
And he does a lot for the community.
He does a tremendous amount. He's a great man. We honored him last year.
Yeah.
At the South Shore at our annual meeting because of that. And Paul was great because he brought all of his senior people there and to be at the table. They were his family, basically. Mm-hmm. And he told a story about every one of them. They had been there for 30 years, for 40 years, for 50 years.
That's terrific.
And they're now part owners of the company.
Yeah.
Which is great. And those are the great stories. There's plenty of those. And that's one of the things that I really want to make sure that we focus on too, is focusing on the good stories. Because there's plenty of them. There's There's enough bad. I don't have to add any to the bad. There's plenty of bad ones out there. But the good stories, and the Paul Sullivan is one of the good guys. He represents that, and it becomes a sort of a goal for people who are.
It's infectious.
And who are looking, who don't want to do the job anymore, who can't do the job anymore, want to find a way out, and if they built a good employee base, perfect. And there's a setup to do that. There's a setup, a tax efficient way to do that. So it's almost. You're encouraged to do that if you so choose, but you have to take less. Mm-hmm. And if you're willing to do that, then why not? Why not? Because as I said before, and I'll say it again, but for our employees, none of us would be worth anything. And 100%. And for the people that make us, those are the people that we have to reward.
Mm-hmm. So, Tim, we're well over time.
All right, I'm going to stop talking. You can wrap things up.
Was there anything you wanted to? Did you come here with an expectation? I've got to say this. I've got to remember that.
I can't even remember what I just said. It was a lot. So I want to give the listeners a break. And if there is any desire for part 2 of this, I'll come back. I'm sure there won't be, but if there ever is, I'll come back with something else.
I think this has been a terrific conversation. We've covered a lot of ground. I don't think
This is almost like a Joe Rogan podcast. We've gone so long, huh?
We'll see if Chris wants to go for another 2 hours. But anyhow, I want to thank you, Tim, immensely. I think the listeners are going to get a lot from this podcast. But I also want to thank the listeners for tuning in. This podcast will be available on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube with additional links on our Facebook page. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at the Pembroke Chamber of Commerce. And if you're interested in becoming a member of the Chamber, please go to the Chamber of Commerce website, pembrokechamber.org. And let's give a plug for your website.
southshorechamber.org.
There you go.
And go on our website as well. It's very easy, or just reach out to us. We'd love to have you as members.
That's terrific. Tim, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Thank you.